Hello everyone, welcome to you all wherever and whenever you are for this live keynote session on the future of work and strive to thrive. This talk is streaming live, so please make the most of this and send lots of questions through the session Q&A box. But first, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people as the traditional owners of the land I'm meeting on today and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future. Now, unfortunately, we weren't able to get my first choice of speaker for this talk, Doctor Who, but I think we've got you the next best thing, Dom Price of Atlassian. Dom is a resident work futurist at Atlassian and helped pioneer their Team Playbook, a workshop resource for getting teams to work more effectively. He is an inspirational speaker and is often invited to share his insights on understanding and navigating the future of work and the changes that we need to make today. I have been enjoying reading his blog posts and can't wait to hear from the man himself. So without further ado, I present to you the guy who is aiming to be the funnest, most chilled, most future-looking speaker in our symposium. Over to you, Dom.
Thank you very much, Rika. That is easily the best introduction I've ever had. And so nice for someone not to just read out my sort of bio like I'm at my own funeral. So thank you very much for that. Just to echo Rika's point, I encourage every one of you to ask a question. If you don't ask a question, please look in that question panel and upvote one that you want someone else to ask. We're going to save time at the end of this. I'm going to share some stuff that I've pre-prepared for you, but I'd love to know your burning questions, so please do ask. So by way of introduction, as Rika's mentioned, I'm the work futurist at Atlassian. It is a completely made up job. At least it was until February when COVID hit and everyone suddenly cared about the future of work. And so I'm going to share some insights with you today. An important piece of context about my role at Atlassian is I spend about 2/3 of my time outside the four walls of Atlassian, with companies of all shapes and sizes going through change. Sometimes that's agile transformation, culture transformation, digital transformation, any kind of transformation. And I'm going to bring some of those stories to you today. But the first thing I want to share with you is a little bit of context about Atlassian. I've been with Atlassian for over 7 years. And one of the first reasons I joined were our values. Our values kind of embody who we hire. They embody how we reward and recognize people. They're even part of our performance review. In fact, we actually have a hiring interview as part of our interview process to make sure that we don't just hire intelligent people, but people that can add to our culture and evolve our culture. Our values stay the same, our culture changes. You might be wondering why on earth this is relevant either to the future of work or to meetings. And that's because the future of work and meetings have one thing in common. They both involve humans, and humans have values. Some of our values like open company, no BS. Everything I share with you today, I'm going to be very open about. I'm going to share a copy of the slides with the organizers. If you want to get a copy, you get a copy. I'm going to share a whole lot of free resources with you because we are an open company by default. I'm also going to talk around Be the Change You Seek. The idea of this conference around meetings, which let's be honest, are probably the biggest drain of my life, right? And the future of work, the power is with us to be the change we seek. All right, I'm going to share with you some insights today that hopefully inspire you to make a difference to your future. I don't believe our futures are written. They're not predetermined. It's not waiting for us. It's up to us to build our future every day. And we do that through action or inaction. And so let's get through this today. Now, a lot of people, when they talk about the future of work, go utopian. The utopian world where we're going to work 4 or 8 hour working weeks. That has not happened to me. I read the book a long time ago, but I'm still not working 8-hour working weeks. And maybe there is this chance for us to have reduced working hours and lots of leisure time. But there's also the dystopian view of the future of work. The robots take over the world and the skies are gray and we become the pets to the robots. The thing is, I don't believe either of those things are true, either the utopian or the dystopian. What I believe is that there are some common themes around the future of work that we need to understand so that we can better build for it. Let's talk about disruption first. Literally a word I wish I'd trademarked 10 years ago. I would have retired, I'd be living on a beach somewhere, and I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. But I didn't. But let's talk about disruption. I think you have a choice. Either you want to be the disruptor or disrupted. And I think there's been this weird notion recently that everyone needs to be the disruptor. BS. It's not true. A lot of people actually benefit from being disrupted and being a fast follower or a slow follower. That's okay. How do we understand that our customers' expectations, both internal customers and external customers, change every single day? In fact, some recent research showed that our expectations aren't based on the industry you're in, but on the best experience we recently had. That means people are comparing your products and services to Netflix or Uber, not to actually the people that you're competing with. How do we understand this world that we're in now, not just of increased competition and war for talent, but the fact that we have distributed teams all over the world? You know, even before COVID hit, Atlassian's third biggest office was home. Our third biggest office after Sydney and San Francisco was people working from home. But despite that and before that, we always have worked in a distributed fashion. I have colleagues in San Francisco, Austin, New York, Poland. And so even though I've often been physically based in Sydney, I believe most of us are working in distributed teams. We're working with people who want to have a faster pace of innovation, and our customers want us to have a faster pace of innovation. And these wonderful things, a wonderful mobile phone, means that we can always be on, but that doesn't mean we should always be on. And so how do we think about these themes? So I narrowed it down. There's like a billion things I could talk about. If you want to read anything about those billion things, I write lots of blogs. But there's three things I want to talk to you about today that I think can help you in your understanding of the future of work and help you drive your own future. So the first thing, context. I want to talk about the things that we can influence. And I use the word influence on purpose and not control, because I think around us we can influence people. The first person we get to influence is ourselves, right? You influence yourself every single day with the way you act, the way you turn up. But we can also influence others with learning and development, with how we think about the growth mindset, how we think about change and evolution, how we think about diversity and inclusion. There are so many ways we can think about driving improvement and continual improvement in our people. The second thing we can influence is our practices. Now, I'm old enough to have graduated and started work at a time when we didn't talk about practices. We talked about process. But process was all about compliance and adherence. Whereas practices is about guardrails, about rituals and habits, and giving people space to navigate, because you trust them to apply the way of working to the individual situation they're in. There's a third thing that we get to influence, products or technology. I might be guilty, and many companies are guilty, of over-indexing on technology. The future is all about technology. It's all about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and Bitcoin. But maybe it's not. Maybe the algorithms aren't going to rule the world. Maybe it's actually about humanity ruling the world and bringing humans back into the workplace. I often say that a fool with a tool is still a fool. You've just made them faster. And a lot of technology will do that. So be very careful who you give technology to. And then the fourth thing that we get to influence is place or places. Because the average knowledge worker, and certainly a lot of the people that I know and love in work in multiple places on any given day, week, month, or year. Now, the interesting thing here is when you think about the future of work, a lot of people think it's about getting any one of these right. And it's not about being best in class at any of these. It's about being congruent, about being consistent, about inspiring your people to work in a way that's congruent with your practices, that is amplified by the technology that you've chosen to use, and is consistent with the space and the environment you've created for them to work in. And think about it, everything you've learned yesterday and you're going to learn today about meetings. Meetings involve people, they involve practices, they involve technology, and they involve a physical environment. And if you don't believe that, try and be the one person dialing into a meeting when everyone else is in the same room. Place makes a difference. The next thing is then who you're solving for. We are, and I'm pretty honest about this, we are brutally selfish that every time we solve a problem, we solve for Atlassian first. Because we actually dog food all of our solutions and practice them ourselves before we share them with our customers. Even meetings, once we actually found some great ways of doing meetings, we share it with our customers, who then share it with their end users. We then think about who else is in that influencer ecosystem. It could be Zoom, it could be a space provider. Who else needs to understand how we think about this? And then finally, the whole ecosystem. How can we all work collaboratively to understand this? And so any change, you need to know the stakeholders you're solving for and what phase you're at. And again, congruence is key. And the third component, which often gets forgotten, is over what time frame are you solving for? Are you solving for now? which, let's be honest, is often firefighting. I have a problem, I need to react to it. Or am I solving for the future, which is very different. Solving for the future is planting a seed today that you're then going to nurture that will eventually turn into something valuable. And so those two different time horizons often need different skill sets, different mindsets, and in my experience are often different people. All right, the people we get to firefight are often quite different to the people we get to fireproof. It'll be no surprise to you that all of these things come together, right? You need to understand what it is you're trying to influence, who you're solving for, and when. And if we take COVID as an example that we're all sort of very, very close to right now, a lot of people thought COVID and the work from home movement around COVID was all about place, but it wasn't. We actually quite easily navigated within 48 hours, and our 5,000 employees around the world were working from home. That bit wasn't so hard. But the thing that really took a lot of effort for us was our practices. Despite the fact that home was our third biggest office, we still had thousands of people whose working styles and practices were built on being co-located. The medium of face-to-face, being in a room, on a whiteboard, breaking bread together over breakfast, a lunch, going for a coffee stroll, whatever those mediums were, meant we had different practices. And the mistake we made is a genuine mistake. We copy, cut, and pasted our working week from in office to at home. And shock horror, it didn't work. Right? It didn't work for us and it didn't work for other people. And so we've invested a lot of effort in the last 3 or 4 months in evolving those practices. First of all, to solve for the immediate crisis, the now, and then secondly, to build for the future. Because you've got to get your ship in order first before you go dreaming and building. It's why we've seen a shift in leadership styles. I think the way I like to think about it is most leaders in Australia have really only led through peacetime. We dodged a bullet in the global financial crisis. We've actually had economic growth for over 25 years. So the average leader has only led through summertime. And when COVID hit, we gave them wintertime. We gave them a crisis. And that's a very different leadership style. It's actually less about thriving and more about surviving, which for a moment in time is fine. There are times when survival can be your goal. But in the long term, and this is, I think, where we're at right now, we're making that transition. We need to move back to thriving and make this better. And that's often a different mindset and a different leadership style. So let's talk about leadership and let's talk about you. This is the highly uncomfortable and quite confronting part of the presentation. This is the bit where I challenge you on something that makes most people feel a little bit squirmish. It's the reality that on any given day, about 20 people role model your behavior. And yet the vast majority of you are probably sat there now going, I'm not a role model. I'm a manager and I'm a leader. You think about it by your title. No one has the title role model, but every single one of you is a role model because you're successful. You're a role model to your friends, to your family, and to your colleagues. And the challenge is no one tells you when they're role modeling you. And so either you need to be a mind reader or you just need to assume that you are on display 24/7. When I realized I was a role model, I was doing an exercise about 2 years ago. A wonderful mentor of mine by the name of Sophie Wade. Sophie's based out of New York, she's an English lady. We were sharing a glass of wine, Pinot Noir for anyone that's interested. And I was trying to get Sophie to help me. You see, I felt that I wasn't evolving as a leader. And the story that I shared with Sophie was an ironic story about so many leaders that I was working with who were driving transformation projects in their companies, but they weren't changing themselves. And we agreed. It was a challenge that there was these people who were trying to say to others, you all need to change, but they weren't actually being honest and changing themselves. And she gave me this exercise to do. Now, I would not recommend doing this after a few glasses of Pinot Noir. A lot easier with a coffee or a tea or a juice. But the exercise is called the 4 L's. Since that meeting with Sophie, I have now done this exercise every 90 days religiously. Every quarter, I sit down and I reflect on my previous 90 days on myself as a leader. This is about putting a mirror in front of yourself and having a long, honest, hard chat. The first L, what did I love? What's the thing that I did as a leader in the last 90 days that's awesome and I've loved it? Not liked. Life is too short for like. What's the thing that I did that I loved? It's quite uncomfortable sometimes, but you're like, you know what? It's probably your superpower. People probably value it. And if you can own it and you can build a platform on it, you can find a way of deriving value without doing more by actually focusing on the thing that you're strong at, right? And actually doubling down on it. The next two L's are related. In fact, the next two L's are an equation. The first part of the equation is, what have I longed for? That's the thing that's probably been on my to-do list for a while. I've been desperate to try it, never get round to it. And it's normally because I'm too busy. And I genuinely believe every single one of you is full, either cognitively full, or actually you're just time poor. You've just got too many things on between work and friends and family and the gym and sleeping and eating. You're like, there aren't enough hours in the day. So you're like, cool. Before you add in the longed for, you've got to take something away. You haven't got extra time. None of us can create that 25th hour in the day or 8th day in the week. And so this equation says that I'm only allowed to add in a longed for if I can find the thing that I loathe about myself as a leader and remove it. Because we're full. It's the only way to do it. The challenge with this is when you add in the longed for, you have to be really brave. Because when you add in something for the first time, and it's genuinely the first time, you're going to be crap at it. And as a leader, that doesn't feel good. Most leaders that I work with somehow think that they're superhuman. They think they have a cape on, they fly in and they always get the answers right. But the best leaders that I work with know when they're wrong and know when they need help. And growing that muscle of the thing that you longed for isn't easy, but it's very valuable. And then the fourth L is, what did I learn? When I reflect on that previous quarter, what's the thing that I did, the experiment that I ran? And I'll be honest with you, I very rarely learn things from the things that were successful. When I get to the end of the quarter and something went well, I have this model in my mind. I'm like, of course it went well. It was meant to. But when something goes wrong, God damn, I will dig deep into that. And I will delve and tweak and ask why and why and why, because I learn from the things that I break that go wrong. Quick example, a few quarters ago, I longed to do more coaching and mentoring. I really enjoy it. I find it very valuable, very satisfying. I couldn't because my calendar was full. But my calendar being full isn't about me as a leader. That's me projecting onto someone else. So why was my calendar full? What did I loathe about myself as a leader? Confession time, I'm a control freak. I really liked attending meetings that I didn't need to be in because the meeting couldn't possibly go well without me, right? I mean, God forbid. It needed me there. And so I'm like, damn, my control freakness is meaning that I'm in 3 places at the same time and I have no time free. And so I deleted every single calendar, every calendar invite. I deleted with a message saying this is either a boomerang or a stick. If it's a boomerang, the meeting comes back. Tell me what the purpose of the meeting is, what my role is, and what you're going to hold me accountable for. 3 things. A third of the meetings came back. The other 2/3, well, they were sticks, because sticks don't come back when you throw them. And those meetings, the people would message me afterwards, weeks, months afterwards, and go, hey, Dom, you know that meeting? We had it, and we continued to have it after you declined it, and then we stopped having it because we realized we only had it because we once had it. It was a recurring meeting. There was no purpose. There was no role for anyone. But most interestingly for me, the third of the meetings that did come back, I was playing the exact wrong role in them. And so it helped me be more effective in the meetings I went to. And it gave me back about 15 hours a week to reinvest in the things that I longed to do more of. And so instead of hating on meetings, I just asked myself the question, why am I in them? And when I answered that question and refined them, I managed to invest the same amount of time for a hell of a lot more value. This exercise is free. It costs you nothing. You don't need any approval. You don't need a business case. You don't need any capital. You need the willingness to be honest with yourself and the ability to follow through. So when I add in a longed for now, I will share it with a colleague because they can often help me connect with someone who's good at that. And when I pick out my loathe, I will contact my peer group and let them know so they hold me accountable. So if I accidentally repeat that old behavior, they call me out. Again, we all work together. It builds a peer-to-peer networking. And then the third component is team. A lot of topics, a lot of talk about high achieving team, high performance teams, autonomy, mastery, purpose. If you listen to Dan Pink, you're going to have goals, a North Star tracking. High performing teams are quite simple because there's so much written about them. But the bit that we miss about high performing teams is the other side of that coin, their emotional well-being, their sense of team cohesion, their sense of belonging, and their sense of inclusion. Do they feel like they can bring their true, authentic self to work? Do they have enough time to unwind? A lot of times when we talk about high achieving teams, we talk about productivity, but we miss that bit about wellness, the person's physical, mental health, the person's spirit and intent. And so well-being is not just an important topic right now. I believe it's amplified by COVID, and hopefully in the future, we treat mental health the same way as we treat someone going to the gym. It's something that we should prevent and manage rather than cure. When we talked about and thought about teams and meetings and rituals, we realized that there is literally an infinite way of doing things. And there is no right way. There's certainly plenty of wrong ways, but there's no singular right way. But what we did about 5 or 6 years ago was me and a team of people in Atlassian decided to document our ways of working. We called it the Atlassian Team Playbook. I even had a presentation that I used to call the secret sauce of Atlassian. And then Mike Cannon-Brooks, one of our co-founders, one day said to me, Dom, why don't you just call it the sauce? Why don't you stop it being a secret? I think it's why he gets paid the big bucks. And so about 5 or 6 years ago, we decided to democratize our playbook and we shared it with the world. We wrote it down, we put it on a website, and we made it free for everyone, anyone in the world who wants to get better at teamwork. It turns out there's a lot of people that want to get better at teamwork. I think almost everyone, apart from the people that fundamentally lack self-awareness, but it's okay, they're at a different conference. And so the way the playbook works is, first of all, the health monitor. How do you assess the health of your team? We talk about leadership teams, project teams, and service teams, 3 different team types or team personas. There's attributes in there and we vote. Thumb up, we're good at this area, thumb sideways or thumb down. It's a great conversation as a team to understand the things that we're really good at and excelling at, the things that we're struggling with that we need to improve. Once you're aware of the things you need to improve on, we've built plays. These are the exercises you do as a team to get better. So if you're struggling in the health monitor with shared understanding, we have a play called the project poster. Why are we doing what we're doing? What's the impact? What's the problem? What's the solution? And what are the assumptions? We've grouped these together on the URL there at Atlassian Team Playbook. They are like recipe cards, just like my mum continually buys me Jamie Oliver cookbooks. Whenever I make lasagna, it tastes nothing like Jamie's, but it's still a decent lasagna. And just like every team approaches these recipe cards differently, it doesn't matter that you're not perfect at it. You don't have to be the best facilitator. These recipe cards are designed to help you get started, to sit down with your team, whatever role you play in your team, and go, you know what, team? Let's invest half an hour in a health monitor. Let's assess how we're working together. Or we're struggling with something, let's run the project poster play. It's going to help us make sure we know why we're doing what we're doing. So instead of saying stopping having meetings, these plays enables us to be more effective at the meetings we do have. Project kickoff, retrospective. The 4 L's is in there as a play. The project poster. There are over 40 plays in the playbook that we have built. Now, we didn't get an external consultant to build these. These were built by Atlassian teams for Atlassian teams. We built them selfishly. We have over 600 teams across Atlassian that use these every single day. You don't need to be a customer. You don't have to sign up for anything. You don't have to pay me any money, no favors. Just use them, right? It costs me nothing for you to use them, but I guarantee if you try some of these exercises with your teams, you will become the force multiplier that builds momentum in your teams. And so when we think about the future of work, when we think about thriving and not just surviving, the question I often get asked is, how do we get there? Sometimes people even say to me, whose role is it? Whose job is it? And the reality is it's yours, right? I think you have to be selfish. You have to be the change that you seek. You have to unleash your potential first. Then you can turn up to your team as the best, authentic, true version of yourself. And then you become a force multiplier in your organization. And so the challenge is on you. Everything that I just shared with you is free. The only thing it needs is you to find the time, the willingness, the comfort or confidence to go, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. If it goes well, I'll do more of it. If it goes badly, I'll learn from it. I'll try something different, because you get to build your future every single day. And I sincerely hope that the last 20 years of meetings I've been in aren't the standard for what we're going to have in the future. So let's find a way of collectively doing it better. So thank you very much for listening to me as I broadcast to you. And now we're going to hand over to the wonderful Rika, who's going to ask me some funky questions, because I'm sure you have sent hundreds through and overwhelmed her with your questions.
They absolutely have. Absolutely right there. And very insightful, very entertaining. Thank you, Dom. So as you said, there have been a lot of questions come through. So what I'm going to do is I might bundle a few in one go to actually sort of save time. I hope I've bundled them correctly. But the first one, I think you wanted to answer it, was the one that you've already seen from Gina. And it says, hi Dom, organizational psychology is the science of people at work. This science focuses on human behavior and optimal people practices and systems in the workplace. How have your views on the future of work and Atlassian work practices been shaped by organizational psychology?
Yeah, great question, Gina. I think organizational psychology is coming to the fore, both as it by itself, but also the behavioral science aspect and behavioral change are becoming way more prominent, certainly in my field and in others. And I'm glad of that, because it's time for us to realize that I think for the last 50 years, humans were competing with the robots, or we saw ourselves as operators of the machines. And you may have realized that that's kind of changing right now, right? The machines are getting more intelligent, they are getting more autonomous, and they are able to do things that we used to command them to do. And so as we go from operating the machines to being a partner of the machines, I think the secret for humans is to be more human. I think the scary thing is, if you look at our fetish for things like productivity and efficiency, it's been a goal for us to compete with robots and technology. And actually what we need to do is to go back to being human, to tap into our curiosity, our creativity, our compassion, and our empathy. And that means changes in the education system. It means changes in work environments, how we think about people, practices, technology, and place. And if we do that in a congruent fashion, I think it would be great. My biggest challenge right now, if I had to lay one down for any organizational psychologist, in school, you are taught that if you chat to the person next to you, that is cheating. And when you join the workplace, we call that collaboration. We are actually uneducating people in the education system. And so we need to go back to grassroots and find a better way of doing it.
Okay, thank you for that. So the next one is just going to be roughly on the question of hybrid work. So this was started from Karen, and actually there's a follow-up to that as well. So assuming the future of work is one where we work in a hybrid model, some team members work in an office space, others elsewhere. What are your suggestions for culture building in a hybrid work? And actually, since you've seen that question, there's been a follow-up from Francis, who said, hybrid meetings will be more common, as well as shared work locations, including home and away. So what's your view on that?
Yeah, spot on. So we're extremely fortunate at Atlasian. About 3 years ago, we acquired a company called Trello, an amazing product. If you've not used it before, give it a try. Trello were 80% remote and 20% in office. When we acquired them, they had some very simple hacks. One of my favorite ones was if one person dialed into a meeting, everyone did. And I was like, well, no, we're all in the office, so we'll get in a meeting room. And they're like, no, if one person dials in, we all dial in. That way we've built a level playing field. Instead of requiring empathy, it's just a level playing field. And so what we're pioneering now with our Team Anywhere announcement we did recently is, how can we be place agnostic? So it doesn't matter where you're located, it matters more how you work. And so we're building our work practices to be place agnostic, so that we actually build a model of inclusion for everyone, wherever they are, whether it be at home, in a coffee shop, in a co-working space, in an office. The reality is that is going to be more complex than today. So even though I hate everything about COVID, the one great part of it is everyone's at home who can be. When we go into this hybrid world, there is a danger of a two-tier system, right? And so we are aware of that risk, and we are building our practices to do what we can to avoid that two-tier system becoming true, whereby the people in the office are seen to be busier or seen to be doing more than the people who are out of sight and potentially out of mind.
Okay, so this next one, I'm bundling two sort of questions and then one sort of actually interesting take on global workforces. So this is started by Rachel. And it was interesting because after she asked the question, you actually answered it a bit in your talk, but I don't think it hurts to revisit it. So Rachel asks, what advice do you have for managing global workforces where teams are distributed across time zones and need to collaborate while giving space for cultural ideas of a normal work day? And that's been added to by, by Alan. Sorry, I've got to roll down a bit. It says, please talk about how organizations with remote working or distributed teams recognize the importance of periodically bringing their teams together. And then the take that I kind of like from Justin, which is, it's a sort of question of culture. Where's it gone? Yes. Does the schema that you've outlined, is it biased towards Western culture, for example, US or Australia, or are you finding that it's applicable to everyone elsewhere?
Yeah, great summary of questions there, great topic. So a couple of things. One is it's very important to celebrate the different customs, even between Australia and the US. I mean, we're both Western, but I'd say we have quite different working customs. We've got offices in Japan, Poland, Brazil, like we were literally all over the place, right? And we, you know, our most recent office that we added was in Bangalore. And so we have this very rich tapestry of customs and cultures. That is something that we embrace. Locally, allow those local cultures to flourish, right? Don't try and make it a one monoculture, right? That we've all worked in those companies where you have one monoculture and everyone sounds and looks alike and it's not cool, right? You agree a lot, but you don't go anywhere because you all just agree too much. So the way we do it is we say, when we're forming a team, and virtually all of our teams by default are distributed, we say, right, if we've got different teams coming together, it's likely you're arriving with different assumptions of how we work. So in our first catch up in our first team meeting, let's just agree, what are our rituals? What are our habits? What are we signing up for? And how do we do that on purpose and not by accident? And how do we do that with a mindset of inclusion? And so it could be, one of the things we've been trialing recently is which parts of the work can be done asynchronously, so we're not reliant on time zones, it's just individual tasks, and which bit is synchronous, where we want to make sure people are either physically together or at least online at the same time. And then to the question about physical gatherings, again, we borrowed this from Trello because they were 80% distributed and remote. One of the things they did, it was at least once a year, they flew everyone in for a Trello week. That was their way of breaking bread together, building those lasting relationships, and you build them in person, you maintain them online. We've actually had a similar model in Atlassian for years. If we were starting a new project or trying to solve a gnarly complex problem, we'd have what we called a spike week, fly people in from around the world, work together for that week, and then you go back to your homes and you work on that problem together. But in that week, you've got a shared understanding, a team cohesion, and a set of bonds that last you the fullness of time. And so I think it's about doing it on purpose and not by accident. And it's also about saying there isn't one size fits all. It's about saying, when you form a team, what are the rituals? What are the habits? How are we going to connect and engage? And when you do that on purpose and you listen for the results to that, you will build a slightly different version each time for each different team. So it is personalized, but I believe the investment that goes into that pays a huge dividend. It sometimes feels like a tax early on, but I genuinely feel like it pays a massive dividend.
So Tom, there are so many questions here, and in the interest of time, we've got to move on to the next session. So can I please sort of ask you to go to the Hoover platform and look at those session Q&As, because I would love to hear your answers to some of those, or all of those questions.
I'll dive onto that. If anyone's got any questions about our products, we do have a virtual booth that Jen, one of my colleagues, is hosting. So the Atlassian booth is in the Hoover app. Go and have a look in that, and I'll dive in and answer those questions that people are asking.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much for your insight. It was a great talk. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone who listened in, and everyone from CSIRO for putting on a great event and some great topics. So thank you.